going to be showing complete beginners how to start crocheting from the get-go. So let's say that you walk into a store and you grabbed some yarn and a hook and you just don't even know what to do next. We're going to go through some major points today, which is how to hold your work starting off, how to slip knot onto your hook, how to read the sleeve of your yarn, how to chain, how to recognize your stitches, and how to turn and basically go back and forth and back and forth. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've got some yarn here that I picked up. I really like this red color. In fact, I make a lot of stuff with red. So you have basically, there's so many types of yarns, but you can basically get two kinds. One of them is a single color, monotone color, and the other kind is called variegated. This is an example of variegated yarn. So I just kind of got like a patterned variegated color. And the first thing you want to do when you buy yarn in a store is you want to look at the sleeve and figure out what size hook you're going to need. So here I have on the sleeve, this is the sleeve, and this actual thing is called a skein. You're going to turn it around until you get to here, and let me show you. So I have a crochet hook symbol, and it says 5.5 millimeter hook, or also in the United States we use letters, so this is the letter I. Or if you're knitting, then this is what you would use for, knitting needles. It also tells you here that this is a medium weight, and you'll learn about that when you read patterns. And so, and also has it written here, 5.5 crochet hook, US size 9 or UK size 5. So on my hook, it has it written here that this is a J or a 6 millimeter. So I don't have a 5.5 hook, but I have a 6, and that's okay for me. I'm just going to use a 6. So if you use a different size hook, just realize that your work will be a little bit bigger and maybe have a little bit more holes. If you use a smaller hook, your work will be a little bit tighter with less holes. So as you crochet, you'll start to realize your tension in your hands, and you'll know if you need to always use a bigger hook than what they ask for or a smaller hook. So try to get this size if you can at the store. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm first going to start by making a slip knot onto my hook. So what I do is I take my yarn and I'm just going to place it in my hand like this, and I'm going to twist it over my fingers, cross over, and I need to now pull this string under here through the hole and grab a loop like that, and then let go of my fingers and then just pull, and this is a slip knot. And then you can adjust the tension like that. And then you place your hook inside like so. So I'm going to show you that one more time. Okay, I've got my yarn like this. I'm going to twist my fingers, cross my yarn over. I'm going to just put this string underneath there and grab a loop. Let go of my fingers, and then just pull it, and then adjust my tension. Okay, so we're going to put our hooks in there. Now you don't want this loop to be so tight that you can't even move it. It needs to just be like a medium tension. It doesn't need to be super tight or super loose, but just right. Okay, don't make it super tight. Okay, so now we have our yarn onto our hook. I'm going to pull my yarn so I have plenty of it. You don't want it to be too tight. You want to make sure you have plenty of yarn to work with. And now here we come to the point of holding our work. So whether you're left or right-handed, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be the same on the reverse hand. I'm right-handed. So what I like to do is at the beginning I like to hold my tail in with these fingers here. And then I'm holding my yarn, my needle, kind of like a pencil, and I like to hold my yarn in my other hand like this, and also with my thumb and index finger I'm going to just hold onto this knot right there. That just helps everything to feel really secure and that my yarn isn't just moving wherever. So either with this hand or this hand you can hold onto your knot. So first what we need to do is yarn over the hook. So if you're reading a pattern it will be YO or YOH if you're in the UK. Yarn over, and when we yarn over, you just kind of want to move your hook to the back like so. This is, I would say, the best way to yarn over. There are two ways to yarn over, but for the sake of this video, I would like you guys to learn to yarn over like this. It will make your work a little bit less tight and easier to just work with. So we've yarned over, and then now holding on to that knot with my index finger and letting go of my tail, I now have this hand free, and I can just slide my hook under and grab this yarn here and put it through the other loop. Okay, so now I'm going to move my hook, hold on to my tail, which is this piece right here, and then I'm going to yarn over again, and I kind of just let the hook do the work. So I yarn over, and then I'm going to switch hands and hold on to it here so it's all nice and controlled. And then with this hand, which is my free hand, I'm just going to slide my hook and twist a little bit to grab my yarn and pull it through. And this is a chain, so I've chained 2. Okay. The actual loop that's on your hook does not count as a stitch. So that's this loop right here. That does not count. We've made 2 chains. So then I'm going to do this again. I'm going to switch hands and hold on to my work with my right hand. And now I have this hand free. And I'm going to yarn over and then grab my work with my other hand and just slide my hook and twist it a little bit to get the yarn under there. Now I have 3 chains. Okay, so this is making a chain, and this is the beginning of anything that you're going to make in crochet. Almost everything, whether you make a blanket or a hat maybe, or I don't know, a rug, let's say, or a basket, you almost always have to start with a chain. So I would also like to show you guys and talk to you about tension. So notice that as I hold onto my work, I have my yarn through my 2 fingers right here. This will help you to control your tension. This is really important. Actually, my great-grandmother taught me this from the very get-go. This was the first thing that she corrected, was you have to have some type of tension in your work. Everything has to be held and steady and controlled. You can't just have strings floating all over the place. So put your yarn through your fingers like this, and then hold on to the other piece with your other fingers like that, okay, or whichever finger you want to use. So just like a sewing machine, you know, your hands are a machine, and so on a sewing machine there's a tension. You have to put the threads through a certain you know, through all these arrows and through all these hooks and loops, so that there's a tension on the string so that the work comes out nice and evenly. If you don't sew, then you don't know what I'm talking about, but you know, you get the idea of tension. So your hands also have a tension, and this is what helps to keep that. So I'm just going to keep on making a chain. So what I do is now I can kind of keep everything held in one hand. I don't have to keep going back and forth since I have something to hold on to. Now I'm just going to hold everything in my left hand and use my right hand as the tool. So I just yarn over like this by moving my hook and then sliding my hook and twisting ever so slightly to make my chain. Yarn over like that. Yarn over, come through. Okay, so let's say that we should make 11 chains. Go ahead and make 11 chains and then stop, and we're going to count that together. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made 11, and now I'm going to show you how to count. So as I stated before, the loop that's on your hook, okay, this right here does not count as a stitch. It does not count as a chain. So if you want to actually take a pause and take your hook out, what you can do is just pull up a little bit and then just take your hook out and place it down. Okay, so we're going to count our chains. So from the beginning, we have this knot that we made right here, and then we have 11 chains. So looking here, you can see this kind of V. This is one chain, or lips. You've got another little V right here. Let me show you with this, maybe it'll be easier to see. This is one chain, this is another chain, this is another chain, and this is the top of our chain. If you flip it to the back, you can kind of see that there are bumps. That's the bottom of the chain, and that's not where we want to work into. We want to have our chain facing us. So this is the top with the V's. So I'm going to count my chains. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, and then this is the loop on my hook that doesn't count. So I have 11 chains. I'm going to put my hook back in there and just pull my yarn so that it's adjusted to the right tension. And now what we can do is we can work across our chain. We're going to do a single crochet stitch across our chain, working back across it, going towards the left. So what I want to do whenever I work on my chain is, because we're doing a single crochet stitch, and you'll learn this as you go, we need to skip one chain and work into the second one. Okay, so working a single crochet, I'm going to skip the very first chain and I'm going to work into the second one. So to make a single crochet, and now you see that I'm holding my work like this with my yarn here, and then with my thumb I'm holding onto my piece. So my other hand is always free pretty much. I'm going to just put my hook into the second chain, put it inside there, and then I'm going to grab some yarn and pull it through. So now I have 2 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to yarn over by moving my hook back like that, and now I'm going to pull this loop through these 2 loops. So I'm just going to slide my hook right through it, and that's one single crochet. Now I need to work into the next chain. So we've already consumed this hole right here, so now we need to work into the next hole, which is right here. Okay, so you've got to follow the V. There's a V right here. We need to go into that hole. So I'm going to insert my hook into the hole. I'm going to, you see how the yarn just kind of naturally loops itself over? So it's looped over, and you just pull it through the hole. Now you have 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and go through those 2 loops. I'm holding onto my work with my thumb. Everything is nice and controlled, and I'm just going to pull it through. Okay, then we're going to go into the next chain. So I've consumed this hole. Now I have my next loop. So I've got a loop right here. This is my hole. This is the other loop on the bottom. I'm going to go through, grab my loop and come out, yarn over, and pull through those 2 loops. That's a 3rd single crochet. So what we need to do is crochet into every loop across all the way to the other side. Let's do that together. As you move across the chain, you'll have less and less to hold on to with this hand. So then you need to start holding on to your work with your other hand, with your other fingers. Okay, so your work is always nice and taut. Go into each hole. And I'm at the end over here. I have 1 chain left. Here's my V, and there's the knot I made originally. So I'm going to go into that last chain. Okay, and here is my first row of single crochet. So now I'm going to count to double check that I made enough stitches. I should have 10 stitches. Why is that if we made a chain of 11? Because remember at the beginning we skipped that first stitch. We had to skip the first stitch so that we could arrive to the height that we need to be at. And this may be kind of strange to understand at first, but as you get going, you'll start to understand what that means. So whenever you do a single crochet row, you skip the first stitch on the chain and work across. So we should have 10 stitches. So in order to take a break from my hook, I'm going to pull up my yarn like this and like take my hook out and place it down. Okay, so let's count. I've found that the easiest way to count is by counting backwards, starting from the very last stitch I did, because I know for a fact that this was my last stitch, but maybe I can't really remember which one is my first one. So to count on the rows, it's easy to look at the top of your stitches because they look like chains. They look like those V's. You see those V's? That's the top of my single crochet. If I turn my work instead like this on the side, I can also count this like this. A single crochet stitch looks like two little legs and then the top V. Okay, so this is one stitch right here. And then this is another stitch right here with the two legs and the V at the top. And then this is another one here with the two legs and the V at the top, and so forth. But it's easier at first to just count it from the very top, looking at the chains. So remember that the loop on your hook doesn't count. I'm going to count backwards. So this is one stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, this here is the stitch that I skipped. Okay, so this is the last V that I have on this row, and that's my last stitch right there. If it helps you, especially if you're a beginner, I would put a stitch marker right in here so that I can recognize this and know what my last stitch is. This would be a really good idea. So let me get a stitch marker. So I don't have a stitch marker, but I found a little hair thing, and I'm going to use this instead. It works just as well, so I'm just going to throw that in there to recognize, oh, that's my very last stitch. If you don't have a stitch marker, you can use this. You can use a bobby pin, or you can actually use a contrasting thread color like this and just put a loop in there, and then you'll know what you're doing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the next row. So I'm going to put my hook in there in my yarn, make sure it's not twisted, and then pull it, to the right size. And now to get to the next row, we have to chain one so that we arrive to the height already of the next row for the border. So I'm going to chain one. So I'm just going to yarn over and pull through. That's a chain. And then I'm going to turn my work. So whenever you read a pattern and it says to turn your work, maybe you're wondering, well, in which direction do you turn? Do you flip it upside down? Do you go backwards? It's not exactly clear. Well, what they mean when they say to turn is to turn it like this, so that you're always working in the same direction. So again, I'm not going to flip it upside down. I'm just going to go flipping it to the right. So I'm just going to flip it like this, and that's what turning is. And now move my yarn over here. So I've got my yarn coming from the left. Okay, so now I'm at the back of my work, and I have to work across my chain, or across my stitches. So I had a 10 stitch count, so I always need to make sure that I have 10 stitches in order for my work to be straight. Every time I go back and forth, I'm counting 10, 10, 10, 10. So I need to go into my first stitch. And my first stitch is right here. This is my chain that I just made. This is my first stitch, and it coordinates down here. So I'm going to just go in there. I'm going to grab a loop, come through, yarn over, pull through 2. And I'm going to do that into every stitch across. So I'm going underneath the top 2 loops. So I'm going to go under those top 2 loops. I'm going to grab some yarn, come through. I have 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, go through 2. and I'm going to do that into every stitch across. So you can, of course, go through one loop if you'd like to have a nice ribbing effect. You could choose to go through the front loop or the back loop. That's something that you'll learn to do. But originally, if you're reading a pattern and it says to crochet doing this and this, and they don't say anything else, what they intend for you to do is to go through both. So I'm just going to go into every stitch across. Okay, and now I have one more stitch to go through, so I'm going to take this off, and on the corner I have my V, so I go under both of those loops, grab my yarn over, and that's my last stitch. And then we need to count just to double check. It's always important to count. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the last V. This loop here was my chain from my end, okay? All right, so let's put in our hook again. If you want, you could put your stitch marker on the very last one so that you don't get confused that it's this last V. It's not that loop, it's this V. I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna keep going. So I'm gonna, because we're doing a single crochet stitch, we're gonna chain 1 and then turn our work. So flipping it so that we're always working in the same direction. And then I'm going to go across. So going into every stitch, the first one is right here. Right there, there's a V. Okay, and it coordinates with this here on the end. So I'm going to go underneath those 2 loops, grab some yarn, come through, yarn over, go through 2. That's my first stitch. And my work will be straight like this. If you have the same number every row, your work is bound to be straight. And then I'm just going to work across. Make sure that you're holding on to your work. Make sure you got your string in your fingers like this. It'll be easier that way for you. If you learn the correct form from the beginning, it'll always be easier. Okay, and I'm coming up on my last stitch, so I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to do that. Okay, so this is my little example here, and whenever you, let's say that you have to do something and then they say, oh, cut and tie in your ends, and you say, well, what does that mean? I'm going to show you what that means. So I'm going to just cut this with my scissors. Let's say you finished your piece of, I don't know, you made a blanket. Now what you need to do is you need to take your hook, just pull it, and the loop will come through like that. Okay, and then you need to take a tapestry needle and sew in your ends. So I just take my yarn and I thread it. Okay, and then I just need to thread it through somewhere through the stitches, anywhere, it doesn't really matter, as long as my work doesn't come undone. So I'm just going to kind of pull it taut, and then I'm going to thread it through the end, and then I'm going to go to the back and just kind of put it under some stitches, going in different directions so it doesn't come out. I don't believe in knots. Like 20 years ago, everybody would knot their crochet work. Yeah, that's not the best way. The best way is just thread it through so you don't feel any nasty lumps or bumps. So I've threaded it in a few times, and now I can just cut this piece, this string, cut it, and then you can just kind of stretch out your work a little bit and the thread will just disappear into itself. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my starting yarn when I made my tail. I'm going to thread this through too into whatever stitches that I want to thread it through. It doesn't really matter. It will totally disappear. You will never be able to see where it is. Okay. And then I'm going to cut. And then I'm just going to stretch it just a little bit. And if there's a little bit poking out, you can just take your needle and kind of tuck it in there. Somehow it'll tuck itself in anyway as it stretches and pulls. Okay. Okay, so that's what cutting and tying in your ends mean. And that's how you crochet. So now maybe you're wondering, well, how do I make a blanket based off this tutorial? All you have to do, it's really simple, is just make a chain as long as you want the blanket to be, and then you're going to follow what we did today by turning, skipping the first chain on the base chain, and then going across. And then when you do that, you have to make sure that you count and know your final number of chains. So if you want your blankets to be straight, you always have to count. That's very fundamental in crocheting. And then you just go back and forth forever until you finish the size of the blanket that you want. That's a great way to practice, but maybe making a blanket would be way too time consuming. So I recommend, actually, if you're going to practice making a single crochet stitch and you want to actually make something, to make pot holders because they're really small, or maybe like washcloths for the bathroom, or even for your kitchen because they're small, they're square, and they're very easy. It's a great way to practice. So if you'd like to watch another video that goes a whole lot more into detail about the basics of crocheting, like what ply is and all the different types of fibers you can use for certain projects and different size hooks and materials, and a little bit about the history of crochet, then go ahead and watch my free Skillshare class where you can join and we do a project together. We actually make a pot holder in that class, and I show you how to change colors seamlessly, and I talk about a lot of things. It's a very interesting class. So go ahead and join. I have a link below that you can click on and join the class and try out the new skill that you have just learned, which is crocheting, which is fabulous. So thanks so much for watching, and like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.